The sun hung high over Cedar Falls, casting long shadows that danced on the dusty ground of the town square. A makeshift gallows loomed ominously at its center, built hastily from rough-hewn timber, the noose swaying in the light breeze like a serpent poised to strike. Ayana stood atop the platform, hands bound, the coarse rope biting into her neck, the weight of the crowd's gaze pressed down on her like a heavy shroud, their faces twisted with anger and fear. "String her up already!" a voice shouted from the back, igniting a wave of fervor in the mob. The chant grew louder, drowning out any shred of humanity among them. Ayana's dark eyes scanned the sea of faces, men and women, even children, gathered to witness what they called justice. But justice had been a ghost long before she had stepped into this place. The sheriff, a wiry man with a nervous twitch, stood nearby, his fingers trembling against the leather of his gun belt. He knew this was wrong. She could see it in the way he avoided her gaze, his forehead slick with sweat despite the cool morning air. "Do your job, Sheriff," someone spat, their words sharp as a knife. "Don't let this savage escape." Ayana closed her eyes, recalling her grandmother's teachings. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was mastering it. "My husband's blood is on your hands," she called out, her voice steady despite the chaos. The woman who had hurled a stone only moments before stood at the front, tears streaking her face. "You killed him!" the woman screamed, her hands clenched into fists. "Your people did. You're just like them." Ayana felt the sting of the stone still on her shoulder. She wanted to scream back that she'd been tending to a sick cousin 50 miles away when the attack occurred. But the truth was drowned in their collective fury. They needed a scapegoat, someone to blame for their pain. The sheriff cleared his throat, attempting to regain control. "Ayana of the Apache tribe," he began, his voice barely carrying over the din. "You stand accused of murder, theft, and conspiracy against the people of this territory." Lies, every single one. Ayana stood tall against the onslaught of a hatred, her heart pounding as she felt the noose's weight tighten. Then the distant sound of hoofbeats broke through the noise, a rhythm that drew several heads around her toward the dusty road leading into town. Caleb Thornfield emerged from the dust, his black horse rearing slightly as he dismounted with purpose. He was a mountain of a man, broad-shouldered and strong, with calloused hands that told tales of labor. But it was his eyes that locked on to Ayana's, a fierce gaze that held promise and defiance. "What's the meaning of this?" Caleb's voice boomed, cutting through the clamor like a thunderclap. The sheriff's relief was palpable. A man thrown a rope in deep water. "Mr. Thornfield," Brennan stammered, "we're just carrying out justice for the Hicks family. This Apache woman is responsible for Tom Hicks's death." Caleb's gaze shifted from the sheriff to Ayana, assessing her, taking in the injustice that had brought her here. "And what evidence do you have against her?" The question hung heavy in the air, causing several in the crowd to shift uneasily. "That Apache witch probably cursed our wells, too." A scarred man stepped forward, his voice laced with venom. "Ever since they started raiding our settlements, nothing's been right in this town." Ayana clenched her fists at her sides, willing her resolve not to waver. She had never raided anything. In fact, she had ventured here in search of work, desperate to gather medicine for her sick cousin. "Your evidence is her bloodline, Marshall Creek," Caleb replied, his tone dripping with disbelief. "That's what passes for justice in this town now." The tension shifted, and Ayana could feel the weight of the crowd's gaze falter as Caleb's presence filled the space. The crowd's chant quieted, curiosity replacing some of their anger. "You defending savages now, Thornfield," Creek sneered, trying to reclaim the crowd's attention. "Maybe all that time alone on your ranch has made you soft toward their kind." "Careful, Creek," Caleb warned, stepping closer, his voice low and dangerous. "I've buried better men than you for saying less." Ayana's heart raced, a mix of fear and admiration swirling within her. This stranger was putting himself at risk, defending her in a way she had never expected. Sheriff Brennan raised his hands, trying to diffuse the bubbling tension. "Let's keep this civil, gentlemen," he pleaded. "Civilized people don't lynch women without evidence," Caleb shot back, his tone growing more heated. The words ignited murmurs in the crowd. A woman in black stepped forward, her grief palpable. "That woman's people murdered my son," she said, her voice breaking. "They left him for the buzzards. Don't you dare lecture us about civilization when we're burying our children." Ayana's throat tightened at the woman's pain. She understood it well. She had felt the hollow ache of loss herself. "But killing an innocent woman won't bring your boy back," Caleb responded, his voice softer, yet firm. "Enough of this," Creek thundered, desperate to regain the crowd's favor. "She admits she's Apache. That makes her guilty of every crime her people ever committed." Caleb's eyes sharpened, his voice unyielding. "By that logic, we should hang every man in this town for the sins of their fathers." He stood defiantly, shoulders squared, as if he could shield Ayana from the weight of the crowd's collective hatred. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows on the dirt street, creating an eerie dance of light and darkness. A child, no more than 8, clutched a worn wooden toy and peered from behind his mother's skirts. His innocent gaze flickered between Caleb and Ayana, searching for a sign of hope amidst the storm brewing before him. The mother held her son tight, fear etched on her face, but the child's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Are you going to save her, mister?" he asked Caleb, his voice barely above a whisper, but laced with earnestness. The crowd shifted, a ripple of uncertainty sweeping through as they absorbed the child's question, the weight of his innocence contrasting sharply with their fury. Caleb knelt, lowering his imposing form to be level with the boy. "I'll do my best, son," he answered, his voice softened, as if speaking to a fragile bird. "But it's not just my fight. Everyone here has a choice about what kind of people we want to be." A murmur spread through the crowd like wildfire, unease growing like a gathering storm. Ayana's heart fluttered. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to turn the tide. She took a step forward, mustering the strength to break her silence. "I didn't kill anyone," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor of fear within her. "I came here seeking healing for my family, not to cause harm. You've lost much, and so have I, but vengeance won't fill the emptiness." The scarred man from before scoffed, muscles tensing as he fought against the tide of uncertainty that Caleb had sparked. "Enough of your words, Apache. Your kind is nothing but deceit and darkness." Caleb shot him a sharp glare. "And what of you? Are you any better? To threaten the innocent while hiding behind the ghosts of your own grief." He turned back to the crowd, voice rising. "Look around! Are we really going to let rage blind us? Are we going to become the monsters we claim to be fighting?" The dust stirred at their feet as the sun sank further, the street growing dimmer. More murmurs surfaced. Some faces were starting to soften, others still brimming with resentment. Then, out of the gathering shadows, an old woman emerged, her shawl wrapped tightly around her frail shoulders. Her voice, ancient and wise, cut through the noise like a knife. "I've seen many lives lost, many families torn apart by this cycle of hatred. We're all but threads in a tapestry, woven together. Don't cut the threads too soon, or you'll unravel the whole picture." Ayana felt a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. The old woman's words hung in the air, a balm over the chaos. She turned her gaze to Caleb, who met her eyes with an unyielding determination. In that moment, she knew they were bound together, not just by the peril at hand, but by a shared desire to forge a different path, a thread of possibility woven against the backdrop of despair. "Let's choose a new thread," Caleb urged, his voice carrying the weight of something profound. "One that ties our communities together instead of tearing them apart." As the last rays of sunlight cast a warm glow over the scene, Ayana felt the noose slacken just a little, the eyes of the crowd shifting from judgment to contemplation. For the first time, she sensed the flicker of change stirring in the air, like the promise of rain after a long drought. The old woman raised a gnarled hand, silencing the crowd with a mere gesture. "This town has been drenched in blood for too long. Can you not see? We are all wounded, each of us carrying our scars." She turned her gaze to Ayana, her eyes piercing yet gentle. "You, child, are not the enemy. We have fought too hard against the shadows to let them swallow us whole." A chill crept through the gathered townsfolk, some shifting uneasily, the remnants of anger still clinging like dust to their boots. The child, emboldened by the old woman's strength, edged closer to Caleb, clutching his toy like a shield against the darkness that encroached. "Can we help her, mister? Can we make it right?" Caleb glanced around, gauging the crowd's resolve. "We can start by listening," he said, his voice steady as the mountains looming in the distance. "Listening to our fears and our hopes. It's time to speak of healing rather than vengeance, to share our burdens instead of casting them aside." In that fragile moment, a gust of wind swept down the street, stirring the dust and carrying the scent of wild sage. The people inhaled deeply, the earthy aroma mingling with a hint of something fresh, a possibility. The scarred man hesitated, his hardened features softening ever so slightly as he watched the boy's hopeful gaze. Maybe we can find a way," he muttered, almost to himself, as the words hung like smoke in the air. A few others nodded, glancing at one another as if waking from a long-held slumber. Ayana felt a spark of courage igniting within her. "Each of us has lost something, someone, but we can build something new together," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Together we can find a way to honor our past without letting it consume us." As the shadows lengthened, the once hostile crowd began to shift, the weight of their collective grief turning toward something deeper, a yearning for connection. The child's innocent smile broke through the tension, lighting a pathway through the darkness. The old woman nodded in approval, her expression both sorrowful and proud. "See," she said, her voice softer now. "Even the smallest of us can weave a thread of light in the deepest of shadows. Will you join hands, brothers and sisters? Let's weave a new story." The townsfolk, once poised for conflict, began to lower their defenses, glancing at one another with new eyes, eyes that saw not just the pain, but the shared humanity beneath it. As they stood there, the sun dipped below the horizon, surrendering the day to the night. But in that gathering dusk, a flicker of hope began to illuminate the path ahead, casting their fears into shadow. Caleb stepped forward, extending his hand toward the scarred man. "Will you stand with us?" he asked, the challenge clear yet inviting. The moment hung in the air, filled with the weight of possibility, as the man hesitated, then slowly reached out, meeting Caleb's grip. A ripple of acceptance surged through the crowd, a fragile yet burgeoning bond forming, one thread at a time. Ayana looked around, her heart swelling with hope. Perhaps they were beginning to weave the tapestry of a new beginning, one that wouldn't be easily unraveled. The moment was electric, the air thick with anticipation as more hands reached out, grasping and intertwining like the roots of an ancient tree. The old woman stepped forward, her voice rising above the soft murmurs. "This is where we begin anew," she declared, her gaze sweeping over the assembly, her presence a sturdy anchor in the swell of emotions. Caleb's eyes lit up with determination, feeling the warmth of unity beginning to unfurl among them. "We can gather our stories," he suggested, glancing toward the weathered storefronts lining the street, their peeling paint whispering tales of days long past. "Each person here has a piece of this town's soul. Let's share them." A man in the back hesitated, his arms crossed over his chest, distrust etched into the lines of his face. "And what good will that do? Stories don't bring back the dead." "But they can heal the living," Ayana countered, her voice steady. "They can weave us together in ways we've forgotten." She stepped closer to the storefronts, brushing her fingers over the time-worn wood of a doorframe, the splinters rough against her skin. "These walls hold echoes of laughter, of sorrow, of life. Let's reclaim those echoes." Caleb nodded, gesturing to the old woman. "Let's hear your story first, ma'am. Let's start with you." The crowd turned their attention to her, the tension palpable, but it was tinged with curiosity, a willingness to unravel the tightly wound threads of their shared history. The old woman took a deep breath, her gnarled fingers trembling as she spoke of her childhood, of sun-soaked afternoons spent running through the fields beyond the town, laughter ringing through the air like a melody. The people leaned in, rapt, the weight of her words weaving a delicate fabric of connection. A sudden clap of thunder echoed in the distance, a reminder of the storm brewing just beyond the horizon. The clouds began to roll in, dark and brooding, but instead of fear, there was a sense of urgency in the air, a call to embrace the moment, to fortify their resolve before the rain began to pour. As the old woman continued, her voice gaining strength, Ayana's heart raced with each syllable. She glanced at the child, still clutching his toy, eyes wide with wonder, and felt the resolve build within her chest. "What if we shared our burdens too?" she interjected. "What if we let go of the blame and welcomed the weight of our collective grief?" The scarred man nodded slowly, the lines on his face deepening with the recognition of his own pain mirrored in the eyes of others. I lost my brother to this cycle of hatred, but maybe sharing that burden could lighten it. His voice, once rough and thorny, now held a softer edge, a tentative hope blossoming like wildflowers after rain. The old woman smiled, a threadbare warmth illuminating her weathered face. "Yes," she urged, "let us speak of our losses, our joys. Let us tie our hearts together, stronger than the strongest rope." With the first droplets of rain beginning to patter against the ground, the townsfolk found their voices, a choir of stories rising like steam from the earth. They shared laughter and tears, fragments of lives lived, the sound carrying through the night, merging with the rhythm of the rain, a symphony of healing unfolding beneath the stormy sky. In that moment, the tempest that loomed seemed less a harbinger of despair, and more a cleansing force, washing away the remnants of anger and fear. Ayana stood amidst the crowd, feeling the tapestry of their shared humanity grow ever richer, intertwined by the very threads that once divided them. And as the rain fell, it painted the ground with the promise of renewal, marking the start of something profound, something that might just withstand the storm. A gust of wind swept through the square, tugging at the edges of their clothes and ruffling the loose papers that lay scattered near a nearby bench. It carried the scent of wet earth and nostalgia, reminding them of forgotten summers and the laughter of those who'd come before. Ayana closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing the weight of the moment. A mosaic of memories being forged anew, Caleb stepped forward, emboldened by the atmosphere thickening with stories. "I remember the old dance hall," he said, his voice echoing off the stone buildings. "They used to host barn dances every Saturday night. You could hear the fiddles from miles away, the floorboards creaking under the weight of joy." His eyes sparkled as he recalled faces lit by lanterns, hands clasped in rhythm, hearts beating as one. "We could bring that back," he proposed, the excitement in his tone contagious. "It was more than just a dance. It was a celebration of life." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, the memory of those gatherings stirring something deep within each of them. The hesitant man in the back, now uncrossing his arms, leaned forward, searching for the echo of those evenings in Caleb's words. "I remember my sister twirling across the floor, her dress a whirl of colors." The corners of his mouth curled into a reluctant smile. "She always made sure I was her partner, even when I had 2 left feet." The old woman chuckled softly, her laughter a warm embrace. "And I remember the smell of sweet tea and homemade pie," she added, her voice rising in a crescendo of recollection. "The kitchen would be alive with chatter, the scent mingling with the music, wrapping around us like a blanket." Ayana opened her eyes and looked to the sky, where fat drops began to fall, creating a dance of their own against the cobblestones. "Let's make a plan," she urged, the rain drumming a steady rhythm on the ground, each drop a heartbeat that united them further. "Let's revive those gatherings, share our stories, not just under the weight of grief, but also in celebration." With a newfound vigor, the townsfolk began to discuss ideas, their words spilling out like a river, breaking free from its banks. A small boy stepped forward, his voice high and innocent. "Can we have a bonfire?" he asked eagerly, eyes shining with hope. "We could tell scary stories and roast marshmallows." Laughter erupted, a joyous sound, buoyed by the rain, the tension that had once gripped them beginning to dissolve. Plans formed like a tapestry woven from laughter and dreams, the storm overhead becoming a backdrop to their shared resolve. As the drops fell heavier, pooling at their feet, Ayana felt the warmth of connection bloom in her chest. This was not just about reliving the past. It was about breathing life into their future, about finding strength in vulnerability. Beneath the rain, the town transformed, each face